Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. This semester, I am spending a little more time and giving you a little more detail on some of the reasons why the British were successful in defeating the French and its implications for North America. French settlers in the New World settled in what is today Canada. But instead of creating self-sustaining colonies, they were more concerned with trade relations with the Native Americans. So since they were not really worried about creating colonies, most of the migrants there were French males and very few females. And many of those coureurs de bois, or the men of the woods, ended up integrating with Native American tribes and assimilating, and they married many Native American women. The fur trade was the main reason for any sort of trading posts or what colonies did exist in New France. A secondary reason was conversion to Catholicism. The French were interested in converting Native Americans to Christianity, specifically Catholicism, and the Jesuit priesthood was sent there with this intention in mind. And thanks to the exploration of French explorers in the late 1600s, in the late 17th century, eventually in 1718, the French colony of New Orleans was established at a vital point on the Mississippi River. New Orleans is the choke point for controlling trade that comes down the river. Robert de La Salle and Father Hennepin will be some of the first white people to ever see Niagara Falls, New York. And from the Portage Road, they made their way over to Lake Erie, and eventually through the lakes they got to the Mississippi, and they went all the way down La Salle anyways, eventually floated all the way to New Orleans. In England, in 1688, the Glorious Revolution re-established Protestant control of the English crown. William and Mary organized European allies against the aspirations of Catholic France and Louis XIV. From this time on until really the beginning of the 20th century, Britain and France are going to be major rivals worldwide. And the results of these wars will end up shifting the balance of power in Europe towards Great Britain. Specifically in North America, the French and Indian War from 1754 through 1763 is known as the 7 Years' War worldwide. In North America, this is fought over control of the Ohio Valley, believed at the time to be, quote, the most fertile country of America, according to the authors of your textbook. The French are defending their interests in the Ohio Valley by constructing a series of forts in upstate New York and western Pennsylvania. And because of this, Major George Washington of the British Army is sent by the governor of Virginia to warn the French to leave this area. At the time, it's considered to be part of the Commonwealth of Virginia. The Virginians believed that they controlled land rights all the way to the Mississippi. In 1753, Washington demanded at Fort Le Boeuf, which is today Erie, Pennsylvania, that the French leave the area, and they refused. At this time, then, Washington returned to Virginia. He returns later in the year with 150 troops and Native American scouts and guides. They headed for the strategic area of the Three Rivers, the Allegheny, the Monongahela, which form the Ohio River, which then goes all the way to the Mississippi. And he constructed a fort, but before he was able to do this, the French had already been to this area and constructed Fort Duquesne. So Washington's party then camped nearby Fort Duquesne, and eventually a French scouting party will be checking them out, and Washington then attacked and was killed. The French attacked, and part of Washington's command was destroyed. and because of that, he had to surrender. This is the beginning of the end of Washington's career as a British officer, because he's failing to oust the French from the Ohio Valley. The British are very concerned about this and the results and who's controlling the Ohio Valley, and eventually a meeting is organized at Albany, New York. And the Albany Plan of Union, which was dominated by Ben Franklin, he is urging the 7 colonies who met there to unite. It was unsuccessful at that time. The British government then decides to force a showdown with the French on the continent. The arrogant General Edward Braddock was sent into the Ohio Valley in 1755 to get rid of the French. Washington accompanies him. There was a 1,000-man force that begins to cut a 125-mile road through the wilderness of the Allegheny Mountains towards Fort Duquesne. They were almost there when the French and their Native American allies, mainly Huron and Mohawk Native Americans, attacked them, and they pretty much wiped out the whole force. 914 soldiers were killed. The following year, war is formally declared after Native Americans continued attacking and killing settlers in western Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. As mentioned, this is eventually fought on 4 continents and on 3 oceans in the 7 Years' War. Eventually, the British recovered and another force defeated the French at Quebec and the Quebecois in 1759. In the south, the Cherokee Nation, allied with France at this time, is defeated in 1761, and the war continues until 1763, and eventually the British are triumphant in this war. This is the beginning of the end of the French monarchy because the 7 Years' War bankrupted France. And it's the beginning of many, many troubles that will culminate in the French Revolution in 1789. Not only in North America, but colonies in the West Indies and India eventually become British as well. In return for losing Florida, Spain received control of the territory west of the Mississippi, which comes to be called Louisiana, and they also regained control of the port of New Orleans. And this particular question there can be answered with B, C, D, and E being true. Remember that Washington was defeated. He did not defeat the French. And that's it.